Hello, this is Karen Morgan here with City Council member Charley Abel, uh, asking some questions for the Lakewood Informer, get you on the record with what's going on at City Council. Have to say, I feel a little ridiculous playing the journalist to a veteran reporter such as yourself. But I do feel like your experience really helped you along here at council. You do ask good questions. You see to the bottom of issues. You always have pertinent comments. So I watch when you talk. I watch when everybody talks. But when at this last meeting in December 19th now, it seemed like you didn't get to say everything you wanted to say. So I was a little upset with that. Do you feel that way?
I often feel that way. And sometimes, I can drone on and on and on, and I can think of 30 questions about any issue. But on the night in question, Adam decided he was going to put some irritation out there, or aggravation, where there shouldn't have been. He kept saying, it all started on December 5th, I believe it was, a Monday night, when we were going to entertain the idea of an executive session to discuss the incentives for the to be added to the city manager's contract.
Right.
However, in the run-up to that meeting, Adam provided us with no information at all. Not the wording of the new incentives, not the wording of the new incentives in the context of the contract that she's working under now. A contract, I might add, that has no expiration date. It seems that we just can continue updating incentives in other paragraphs. And it does seem that that has to be done with her consent.
I'm sorry, so, updating the contract is done with her consent, or what part is it? And can you tell me, is that unusual to have an open-ended contract?
Well, according to her contract, the manager or the mayor is the point person for renegotiating the terms of her contract. The mayor seemed unaware of that, which concerns me, since he's in charge of this renegotiation, and he said he's doing it through the authorization of a consensus of city council. It doesn't really matter what consensus we might come to. It's in the manager's contract that the mayor will negotiate with the manager for updating terms.
Okay.
Anyway, to make a long story short, I didn't feel that we were in a position, that I was in a position to discuss what is a fairly complicated contract, 18, 19 sections to it, without seeing it first. The mayor would have had us at his advantage, which he, I think, enjoys. So I mentioned that, and in the lead up in the public session before the proposed executive session, 3 councilors expressed similar views, 3 other councilors, and then Lakewood, under the city charter, it requires a supermajority of 8 to go into executive session.
Okay.
Well, they didn't have it. Adam didn't like the having a monkey wrench thrown into his plans.
He did reference that several times.
Yeah. So in the meeting, last Monday, or Monday before last, he went on and on about, well, you would have known, I would have given you the information after we convened the executive session. Now you can't talk about the relative characteristics of the manager would be a good way to put it, a polite way to put it, I guess. Some folks on council had been that night, immediately before Adam brought this up, had been speaking well of the manager. And, you know, there are a lot of good things to say about our city manager. But he didn't allow anyone to speak to present unfavorable points of view. I had none to present. My only concern was that the mayor was trying to paint the December 5th meeting as something it wasn't. So, as the mayor was looking up something I had asked about the contract, I ventured to, and he had just gotten through scolding me about not allowing him to have his executive session. I said, Mayor, you could have had your executive session had you provided the necessary information. And I might have said it in a few more sentences than that. I can be wordy at times. But the mayor muted me. He didn't want to hear what I had to say, even though I had to listen to his point of view on the same subject. He didn't want the record corrected, I suppose. So he muted me.
At this point, you're just talking about going into the executive session.
Right. Well, I did not want to go into that executive session. That, you know, we claim to be transparent, but if we're not provided the essential information for a discussion, then we shouldn't be discussing it, and that isn't transparency.
Sure.
So, so the mayor muted me for trying to set the record straight about his allegation. And then he recognized Councilman Over, and apparently Councilman Over said something that Adam didn't want to hear, so he muted him too. I just kind of watched the exchanges going on and sat back. Councilman Over unmuted himself and started speaking again, and the mayor started speaking over him and then muted him again. Later, the mayor muted his frequent muting target, Anita Springsteen, when she said, Mayor, when you mute these council people, you're in effect muting tens of thousands of voters. Those weren't her exact words, but it's a close summation.
Sure.
He didn't want to hear that either, so he muted her.
Oh, no. So this didn't have it, and now he will claim that he's only maintaining decorum or shutting off disparaging remarks because we can't have personnel, but that's not what you're hearing. That's not what you're saying was going on.
No, I was not being disparaging. I was merely pointing out that the mayor was giving us a line of BS.
Yeah.
And correcting the record. I wasn't disparaging. I certainly wasn't talking about staff. And I wasn't speaking over the mayor. You know, our policies and procedures says that, manual says that when we have the floor, we're not to be interrupted until we yield the floor. And the mayor just ignores that completely, very often.
Okay.
So anyway, we felt that by not allowing us to communicate the facts to our constituents in our speaking time at city council meeting, an open meeting, I believe the mayor is interfering with the First Amendment rights. not just of council, but of the folks out there who are listening for my explanation or to my explanation. You know, if they don't like it, they don't have to believe it or to accept it. But, you know,
Right.
it is on the record. We had an open meeting before going, in which we rejected the executive session. So that record should be readily available.
And why, if this was, so there is a difference between meeting, this wasn't a personnel evaluation. So, right, but that everybody's opinion does come into play when you're saying, well, what kind of incentives would you want to give a person? My boss wouldn't want to even entertain a bonus discussion unless I was doing a good job. So some of that, you know, just is in the background. But this was a contract discussion. You could have gone back in. Why? So first of all, why didn't it go back to an executive session on the 19th? Why was it scheduled as a special meeting?
That's a good question. Because they provided the information that I needed in the first place. And I would have had no objection to it. I think it was, you know, in elementary school, kids would come up and say, I'll show you. I think that was kind of what it was. They were going to show us. So,
the contract I saw when we did a quora for it says that they are facilitating the negotiations. Is that what you mean by the mayor's the point person? Because the city council should have oversight over it all.
No, she has. In fact, I have copies of her 2009 contract, which is very straightforward. Has certain limits on severance and such as that. The 2014 contract, which I'm told continues in effect except for changes we make along the way, like the incentives we added the other night. And in this contract, the 2014 contract, it says the mayor shall negotiate with the city manager. It also has, among the other, some of the other clauses in there, it says we have a city charter. The city charter is our constitution. We take an oath to uphold city charter, each and every one of us. This contract says if the contract is in conflict with the city charter, the manager's contract prevails.
The contract prevails.
The contract prevails. The citizens passed this charter, and the council in 2014 saw fit to say, well, no matter what the charter says, we'll just let this contract override it. And I don't believe that's a legal thing or a proper thing when they put it that way. The charter, to show you how closely we abide by the city charter, when I was elected and sworn in, they swore me in with the wrong charter. The charter is, or the wrong oath. The oath is specified in the charter, word for word. And somehow, over the years, it dropped out and some substitute language was added, I would imagine, by City Hall. So I'm not surprised that they would have tried to let this contract override the charter, but I just don't think it's would stand up to a test.
But would you have, so even you as a sitting council member, would you have any, what would you do if you are concerned about that? Would you be able to challenge it or ask for a study session or have legal review or what? I don't hear any, especially if the mayor is the one in charge of everything. What's the relationship here?
Well, the thing is, unless the item is on the agenda, then we can't vote on it. And we can't discuss.
How do
We
you
could
get it
bring
on the
it
agenda?
up in the future, but this was presented to us as only the incentive. And that's all the public read. They didn't have the context of the incentive as applied to the entire contract. So it is difficult to bring in something that has not been on the public and on the agenda and in the public notice.
How things get on the agenda, my understanding of that process is that you have very limited ability to get things on the agenda. You can, you have the annual retreat, and that you discuss and decide as a group of big things. But if something comes up through the year, maybe you can ask for a study session, and that is by vote, council request.
We have a thing, I believe it's called a legislative update request. Let's see, I have one right here. It is called City Council Proposed Legislative Priority. It is separate from the annual planning meeting where we list our priorities and discuss them over the course of the day. An individual council member with an idea for legislation types it up, fills in the blanks and files it, and then we discuss it under general business some weeks later. And if it gets a consensus from a majority of council, it moves to a study session or even legislation. So we could probably have accomplished that sometime in the middle of next year, had we done it that way.
That seems a little slow. It also kind of seems like is that why? I mean, this is, I would think that, you know, you have a idea that's new, that's added on, that's an extra, but you have to talk about this performance evaluation every year. You can do that contract. I mean, when I'm looking at the performance evaluation and this contract thing, I think the total time spent on this is what, under 3 hours? You can do that in a week on affordable housing. Is it because it wasn't?
Well, it's well under that. However, in the contract, the 2014 contract that remains in effect except for the incentives, there are a number of goals, objective organizational outcomes, they're called in City Hall parlance. But these objective organizational outcomes include things like operational, national and regional awards and recognition, capital program completion, comprehensive workforce plan, and then the police department accreditation, which is fairly routine. We have one of the best police departments in the state and probably in the nation. And then community relations as well. Part of the community relations is item 2, Part B, the community survey. We have it used to be every other year, and now it's every 3 years. And it requires a 70% satisfaction or greater. I have never, in the evaluations I have taken place, I have had that presented to me beforehand, outside the executive session as a condition that needs to be met. So, unless someone sits down and reads this lengthy contract, let's see, I said, it's 18 items at least that have to be weighed in total. So we have an annual review, and I believe the terms of it are presented to us by our employee relations department.
When I interviewed Rich, he said that there was some oversight taken away in this incentive program. Is that true? Can you tell me anything about that?
In what program?
Oversight was it taken away in this incentives agreement?
Oh, no, the oversight were the paragraphs I was partly referring to on the operational and, what do they call it again? Objective organizational outcomes. When I asked, I was told they remained in the contract.
Okay.
So in effect, all we did was cut and paste the new incentives and the language surrounding them into the 2014 contract.
Okay. Okay. So it seems like a fairly straightforward discussion. And I didn't see, except for people getting upset for being muted, it wasn't a lot of raised voices or contention or angry, except for that. So the other reason Mayor Paul cited was that he's maintaining decorum in the chambers. Can you give us any read on what would constitute a lack of decorum here?
Well, apparently it's not what constitutes a lack of decorum to me, but what presents a lack of decorum to the mayor. And apparently it's just someone saying, no, Mayor, you didn't speak correctly there.